Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tennis Channel Inside In on the Tennis Podcast Network. Mitch Michals here from the Santa Monica studios. Wimbledon is underway. Joined now on Inside In, a betting analyst for NBC Sports Edge, Action Network, and Boardroom, Kenny Ducey. He's been on the Tennis Channel Gambling Show as well. Kenny, good to finally chat with you here.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Mitch. Long time in the making. We met out in LA at that John McEnroe event. I'm excited to talk some tennis with you. We were rudely interrupted by Mr. McEnroe.
I know.
It was great.
I wasn't going to let anyone interrupt us, but if you've won, 7 Grand Slams, you can interrupt me. But hey, and
6 maybe not, but maybe 7,
maybe not. Maybe not 6. But for anybody out there that wants a question or just ask about not only your background, your credentials, but I just go to the Marin Cilic to win his quarter pick at Roland Garros. That's my first 18-1, I think.
Yeah, it was. I'm trying to rest on those laurels. I am. No, that was great. I made sure people knew I had that.
Yeah, Cilic beating Medvedev the way he did, and just and it's an unfortunate segue into Wimbledon because Cilic is one of the people that's not able to play this event. We've talked endlessly about the Russian ban, but just brutal for Cilic, and of course, Matteo Berrettini not able to play in this tournament. Finalist last year, comes back from surgery, wins 2 grass court events. Everything was building towards this moment, towards this chance. A favorable draw opportunity, and then not allowed to play. And you talk about life and sometimes in sports not being fair. This just felt like one of those not fair moments because there's no guarantees in this, but this was really shaping up to be a career-defining moment for him.
It was, and that was actually my pick. I was about to celebrate that the same way I celebrated Marin Cilic because I had him plus 1,300, and after he won Stuttgart, which was. I actually talked to some people inside the gambling world who work at some sports books. And I was like, why? What happened there? Like the guy won Stuttgart. He breaks his hand. He's plus 800. He drifts out to plus 1,300. He wins Stuttgart. He's still at plus 1,300. And he was just like, hey, man, it was just, I don't know what else to tell you. It's just odds makers, laziness. And that is the beautiful thing about betting tennis sometimes is that, it is a sport that's very heavily bet. It's, you look at the numbers. FanDuel always releases their top sports of the month. It's always in the top 5. Yet for some reason, the lines don't get the same attention because, the odds makers are paying attention to the bigger sports, the really heavy handle. But yeah, I mean, that was devastating for Berrettini. I thought the draw was tough for him in quarter 3. I mean, this quarter is absolutely stacked. We'll talk about it more. Mm-hmm. But, the way that he has played on grass, and this guy outside who just honked his horn agrees with me, over the last 3 years, everyone knows the numbers. He's only lost 3 times. Djokovic in the final last year, Federer at Wimbledon, and David Goffin. He is an unstoppable player. The only way to stop him is to hit to his backhand, but his backhand actually becomes a strength on the grass because he slices it so well. And then he can mix in a swinging backhand that he's worked on over the last year. This guy's going to win like 4 or 5 Wimbledons in his career, I think. He's still super young. It's hard to disagree, right? I mean, ALCARAZ looks good this year on grass, which is a surprise. He looks okay. But, I don't know who's going to dominate on this surface, right? I think it's going to be him.
My pushback wouldn't be that I think he's a Wimbledon champion, but 4-5 is that rarefied air of like we're talking all-time greats at this surface. I feel like this next generation, and we've been kind of spoiled, obviously. I feel like we're going to have a bunch of players win 1 or 2. So I think that could be where we're at. But I definitely see what you're saying. The slice backhand is how he can kind of get around having to go to the two-hander that isn't the best part. Perfect for this surface, just a brutal break. But still, as you said, young, I think he is a player that's going to age well, better than most tennis players. I think he'll be able to play tennis into his 30s at a very high level.
I agree. And I also think that while he has had some injuries early in his career, he's not a guy that moves a ton, and when you talk about, an Andy Murray, right, who, he obviously had to have hip surgery like that, the guys who are putting every single ounce of effort, like Alcaraz is going to have issues. Yeah. Nadal had issues, right? The same way, Jensen Brooksby, even like those are guys who give 100% every single point. Those are guys who are not going to age well. But I do think that like Federer, really late into his career, similar with Berrettini, like just the power, the way that he doesn't really have to. He's very efficient with his movement. I think he definitely will play well. I also will say before we get off that topic, like you mentioned a lot of the other guys, I do think that Medvedev, the way he played on grass this year, like it will. I mean, until he lost to Tim van Rijtenven, right? Everyone's favorite to win Wimbledon. He looked like unstoppable on grass, and obviously he's not here at Wimbledon. I think he'll definitely win a couple for sure. So yeah, I mean, when you start to mix that in, maybe our boy Jensen Brooksby gets one. Like maybe it is tough to see 4 or 5, but I haven't seen anybody who could step to this guy on grass. And I think that it's a shame that we couldn't see him this year because the way that, Djokovic came in without any form and, Nadal with the foot and now Cilic, even when Cilic had dropped out, it seemed even likelier that Berrettini could get to the final. I mean, it felt like this year was the year it could break for him. So it's tough, but he'll definitely get his Wimbledon very soon.
Well, let me ask you this as well. And I know you're on it, all tennis betting all the time. Do you find that there's any increased degree of difficulty, I'll say, with the grass court betting, trying to figure out the market, understand things, given the fact that, and the first thing that comes to mind for me is it's a short season. You don't have the reps, you don't have the results to go off of all the time. Do you find that it's any more challenging to look at the market in grass court tennis?
Yeah, it is, because like you said, excuse me, the form, right? Like I like most bettors really struggling here, will bet based on form, and I think that when you don't have a ton of, even indoor hard courts, right? Indoor hard courts are rare, but you still have more indoor hard court tournaments to go off of. Oh, this guy's really good indoors. This big surf, Adrian Manarino's good indoors. Riley Opelka's, whoever it may be. So I think that does make it tough. And also what we see it sometimes on clay, where a guy, usually an American or a British player, right, will come out of nowhere and just have a great clay court season out of absolutely nowhere. Dan Evans years ago, Mackenzie McDonald, Steve Johnson, I think, went to the 3rd round of the French Open last year. Yeah. It happens all the time, right? Cam Norrie turned into a clay court player also. They figure out how to play it. Grass is one of those where, it doesn't really make a lot of sense for players to get really good on grass unless you have designs on a top 15 ranking. A guy like Filip Krajinovic this year took everybody by surprise because, he had never won a main draw Grand Slam match. He had, main draw grass match. He had been in the, around for like 10 plus years. And then all of a sudden we see him and he goes to the final of a grass court tournament because he just put in all this work on clay, or on grass rather, which was unexpected. And also it's hard to figure out, right? Because, okay, well, he looks okay, but he beat Sam Querrey. Like, is not really a big, and then all of a sudden you're trying to figure, you can make excuses for why he won, but what it boils down to is he's just more comfortable on the surface. He practiced more. So yeah, I think that that's what makes it difficult. I also think that what makes it difficult is that you don't need form to be good on grass necessarily. RBA is a guy that has just been kind of fleeting all year. He stepped onto a grass court and we remembered why he was in Wimbledon semifinals. He was so good this grass season and still is playing great tennis this grass season. So that's what makes it tricky, because if you have that game, right, if you have that pedigree, you can like Sam Querrey, won some matches on grass. You could just step onto grass and be as good as you used to be.
Certainly seems
Federer last year. Yeah, exactly. Federer last year had, should have lost to Dan Evans and, was really just not playing great tennis. Steps onto the court at Wimbledon, makes a run. So yeah, I mean, that's what makes grass unique. There's a lot of different things that make it challenging to bet, but that's why it's fun, right? I mean, I wouldn't hate to have something that was easy, because I would just love to stack my money and retire. But it is nice to have a little bit of a challenge to kind of, think critically and figure out what's going to happen in these games, or in these matches rather.
You get more head-to-head opportunities with the same surface too, so you can kind of see who matches up well. And another player you mentioned, or another player we haven't mentioned yet, but Tommy Paul had never won a match at Wimbledon. Now he's into the 3rd round comfortably. So that's kind of my takeaway too, is I like to just observe more rounds 1 and 2. Sometimes it's hard to predict, but I guess the easiest guy to predict early on this tournament, Novak Djokovic, going for what would be the 4th consecutive in terms of when they've had this tournament. Would be the 4th straight Wimbledon if he defends his title again this year. Loses an opening set, which he's been prone to do in the first match, but looked very comfortable against Thanasi Kokkinakis today. And suddenly we're at a point now where we get to, by rounds 2, 3, 4, Kenny, where it's like, how do you beat this guy? And who in his way could pose the best challenges? He's just so solid out there that when you also add in the fact that it's best of 5, this is about as tough outside of Nadal on clay. This is about as tough a task as there is in men's tennis.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. Like, even look at last year. I mean, I'm not saying at Wimbledon necessarily. Jack Draper did take the first set off him, and same thing with Sudbu Kwan this year. But like, Lorenzo Musetti goes up 2 steps still have the French Open, and so does Tsitsipas. And like, that is the thing, right? Like, as much as you think you have the game, to beat one of these guys, there is that intimidation factor. Harmony Tan against Serena Williams. It does not matter if your opponent doesn't look great or is not playing great. You're just, know what you're up against, right? You know how many Grand Slams this guy's won. So it is very difficult. But in terms of who's going to stop him, I don't know. I mean, he is one of the best pushers of all time. He pushes that ball back deep. He makes you very uncomfortable. And he said it before. I watched his pre-tournament press conference. They were like, hey, I mean, how do you expect to win this tournament? You haven't played any on grass. He's like, well, I never really, last year I didn't play, on grass. I came out and won it. He knows that he's good on this surface, and he's very comfortable. It comes back to him naturally. And yeah, it doesn't help, when you look at the way that his draw opens up for him. I think my boy that I just mentioned, Tim Van Rijtenven, probably matches up with him in the 4th round here. He probably should get by Miomir Kecmanovic, who's not a great grass court player in his own right. And yeah, you start looking down, and you start to figure out that perhaps it's going to have to be someone on the bottom half of the draw. And who knows who that's going to be, right? Because like we just said, Cilic and Berrettini, my two picks to come out of quarter 3 and 4 have COVID. So if this were the COVID bracket, I'd be rolling in dough, but it's not. So yeah.
I would also just add that the two things that I think Novak's done the most to transform his game from great to just ultra one of the, if not the best ever, was increase his ability as a server. He's way more accurate, way more precise, way more clutch there. And also it's the calling card of him at Wimbledon is, if I go to a tiebreak, if I go to a big game, he locks it down, no errors. The Federer tiebreak and the Wimbledon final, the match tiebreak. Yep. He just doesn't make mistakes out there. And that's when you talk about pushing. Sometimes it's used derogatorily. In this case, it's a compliment. He just does not make mistakes out there. So the person that beats him will have to beat him 3 out of 5 sets, or they're out hitting him. And good luck with that would be my advice.
Yeah, and like we were just talking about Berrettini, how dominant hit he is. I mean, he played an excellent final last year. He was a clutch server. Berrettini, as our friend Caleb Hammond likes to say, maybe the best clutch server of all time, at least since Sampras. He was serving. He saved so many break points in that match. He was crushing the ball, right? Like he did nothing wrong, and gets broken twice in the final in the 4th set, loses in 4. Yeah, I mean like you said about the serve, I think that that's definitely worth noting, that the service motion is different, and he obviously hits it with more consistency, adds a little bit of miles an hour over the last 5 or 10 years. And then, also the drop shot, obviously, which has helped him a lot on clay, but also, we see it with Carlos Alcaraz. If you have a guy that just consistently finds depth,
Yeah, it's going to be tough to beat him. One person that's had success in that regard, maybe the only person playing right now that's had success in that regard, Rafael Nadal, wins his first match at Wimbledon. A lot of speculation of whether or not he's even going to play this tournament. He wins in 4 sets, but not the easiest match in the world. And he's been out in the open pretty much saying he's going to give it his best shot with the foot. The fact that he's playing Wimbledon, Kenny, I think is a direct response to winning those first 2 majors. Don't know that he'd be here without that. Reasonable expectations for Rafael Nadal are always to win any tournament that he's in, but I do think this is one we're going to have to monitor the health factor. And I hate to say it, but the fact that he's playing long physical matches aren't going to help him. I think the best thing for him going forward would be quick matches if he can get off the court as quickly as possible.
Of course, that's why I didn't really love him at Roland Garros, because of his draw, and especially that Zverev match. Zverev doesn't turn his ankle. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to all the Rafa fans out there. He doesn't win that match. That match was going to go 5 hours. There's no way on that foot that Rafael Nadal was going to be able to outlast him. So yeah, I mean, you look at just getting a set taken off him by Francisco Cerundolo, who played an excellent match. I think that guy is going to develop into quite a good grass court player. He had some decent performances this year. And I mean, Lorenzo Sonego match, if Sonego's able to get through here, I mean, that's going to be another tough one, right? Because he has a grass court title under his belt. I think he takes a set in that match for sure. He has a ton of pop on the serve and the forehand. Like Rafa's going to be chasing down those balls. And, yeah, I mean, there's no Marin Cilic in the 4th round, but I just think he's going to get battered and bruised along the way through this draw. And like, that's just not something we normally say about, you know, the Nadal's, the Federer's, the Djokovic's when they're in these draws. Like, we just usually expect them to come through without dropping a set pretty easily. But yeah, I mean, I think we already saw it. And the more time on court, the worse for him. And like I'm also saying about the other quarters, and frankly, the top half of this quarter, there is going to be a good player coming out and playing Rafael Nadal, assuming he gets to the quarterfinal. And it is going to be an American player, which is very exciting. I think hopefully anyway, there's 3 Americans that you're looking at, I think here, that could certainly get there. I would think Giron, Fritz, or Cressy, or Sock rather, would have a good chance of getting to that match. And, you know, you want to talk about the proverbial favorite to get there would be Taylor Fritz. And Taylor Fritz, I mean, he already has the win over Rafa. The foot will definitely be a factor there. And that guy is just going to be absolutely relentless with that forehand. I mean, the sheer amount of power that Rafa's going to have to face is just going to be so difficult. And, you know, that's what makes all its Grand Slam wins this year crazy, right? He had heat stroke. Remember that? Again, and Shapovalov should have lost that match. Yeah. And then, exactly. And then, I mean, obviously the rib at Indian Wells, and he still manages to play through that. And he did end up losing. But, I mean, this guy just has just continued to prove us wrong. So I'm not going to like put my life savings against Rafa, but I will continue to say like the deck is definitely stacked against him.
More with Kenny Ducey here on Tennis Channel Inside In. I would agree with that previous statement. It looks like Fritz could be the guy to come out and challenge Rafa. Another shout out to you as well for the Cressy over Felix pick. That was a gutsy first round call. Heavy 4-set match. Shout out to Max Cressy, who played his college tennis at UCLA, has really developed himself into a good to great tennis player, great on this grass court surface with the old school throwback serve and volley style. And what I appreciated watching it, what I thought was the biggest takeaway for me, Kenny, in that match was Cressy stayed in the moment. He stayed in a point-by-point approach to where he didn't let his mind wander into such a huge victory. It's easy to say you're in the moment, you're not looking at it, but you just beat a top 10 guy in the world, a guy who's on fire, who had been playing as consistent as anyone in the Grand Slams, and he didn't unravel. He stayed in it, and shout out to Max Cressy for getting the biggest win of his life at Wimbledon.
Yeah, and what I wanted to say was sort of goes hand in hand with that, is that in that match, you know, he just did what he knows works for him. He just continued to hammer, you know, go aggressive on those returns, stand inside the baseline. Obviously his whole career, right, has been, I'm just going to do the same thing every time on my serve and you're not going to break me, and it works. But I think also like a microcosm of a season, because we remember early in the year, you know, he had that battle with Rafa in the final in whatever it was, Adelaide or whatever one of the Somerset matches was, ends up breaking him back in the second set, tight match. You know, he exploded onto the scene. He took a set, he probably should have taken Daniil Medvedev 5 sets at the Australian Open. And then like, you know, all of a sudden he plays in a Delray Beach match. It's windy. You know, you see how sometimes the confidence levels can be shaken for players. And, you know, he's obviously not a great clay court player. He's never going to be with his style of play, but I applaud him for sticking with it and just continuing to just motor through. And he knew when he stepped onto a grass court that he was going to have an advantage, that he was going to be able to win matches his way again. And he did it. He had a great grass season. He came out here, he beat Felix. It was an amazing win. And frankly, he kind of reminds me of another guy in the draw, in Marcos Giron. Similar situation. I was watching him at Miami too. And he lost his first round match, and he just turned his box. He goes, every match is exactly the same. And it's so right. Like, this guy lost like 7 or 8 matches in a row. So that is the thing about tennis too, is the people who are just continue to power through and don't let themselves fall into an Ugo Humbert situation. You got to just tip your hat, because that takes a lot of willpower. It takes a lot of determination to get through those dark days. And Cressy certainly did it, and he's reaping the rewards right now on grass.
And the surface difference too. You mentioned Giron, his big win over Holger Rune. You have the fact that Humbert, as you mentioned, beats Casper Ruud. Grass court different than clay, and we're starting to see why as well. But good to see those guys fight through. I think just kind of putting a bow on what the men's side is, there's been other upsets, there's been other opportunities there. I guess we should also mention Nick Kyrgios, because he played a local British guy, and it was the full Nick Kyrgios experience, right? You had 5 sets, you had back and forth with the crowd, the umpires, the post-match mini reaction tirade there. I guess this is no surprise anymore that this is the Kyrgios experience. It's also somebody that I think is by his own admission, here for a good time, not a long time. So who knows how many more matches he has left.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I was excited to talk about Nick because I think that, look, it's going to be a tough match if he meets RBA in the fourth round. But to me right now, I mean, he is one of the betting favorites to win this tournament. And I think it's with good reason because that bottom half is wide open. If he can get through Tsitsipas, a player he just beaten Hala, and get through RBA, which will be an incredible clash, one that we were robbed of in I think Hertogenbosch, or no, I think it was Hala. I think that he's got to be the favorite to come out of that half. And that's crazy to say about a guy that, was broken serving for the match in the fifth set in his first match. Look, we know tennis pretty well. I mean, as well as I do. Going 5 sets in your first match doesn't really mean, that you can't win, right? Or you can't go deep. I think he certainly can. I think this is the most fit that he's been. Last year at Wimbledon, he won a couple matches. He had to win one across 2 days. And then, obviously the body gave out. Like, he's played a lot of tennis this year. He is match fit, and I think it's a combination of the most match fit, the most mentally focused. Obviously, you're going to have the tirades. That's him.
Mm-hmm.
He admits that he's a different guy when he steps on that court. But like, we've seen him go toe to toe with Nadal and Medvedev, and beats. I mean, he just absolutely washed Rublev in Miami. He's had a great season, for Nick Kyrgios standards, right? This guy played 15 matches last year. He's come out. He's had some excellent results this year. And he's been very focused, and he's admitted that, whatever is going on off court with him in his personal life, like, it's improved, and, he feels better about, where he is, and just sort of accepts his role of like, I'm just going to do a part-time schedule and do what works for me. And he's making it work. And yeah, I mean, I think that he's got a great chance the way he serves. That first match against Paul Jubb, first of all, we know Paul Jubb's talented, South Carolina product, won the national title there, but like, I mean, Kyrgios didn't serve well at all. And I think the biggest takeaway for me in that match was that he was broken serving for the match, and he still won, which I thought was pretty incredible, right? I mean, he had every right to just start yelling at his box, yelling at the chair umpire. Oh my gosh, I can't. He stuck with it. He got a break, and he won, and I thought that was really impressive.
The game's been there. The confidence, it's always been there. My pause isn't in any one match. It's the mental test for him of going 7 straight. And RBA, you hit the nail on the head. That's a frustrating matchup for anybody, and Nick can get frustrated easily playing a guy that is going to keep getting every ball back. Any one match as dangerous as possible. I don't know that I would put the faith of him to go the distance, but who knows? He could be turning over a new leaf here. And if he's in shape, that's going to be the biggest thing for him, is that he's still physically able to go. You mentioned Tsitsipas. I just want to say this is an opportunity. I don't want to say of a lifetime, but we've always thought that he could have success on grass. He has the game to do it. The style fits it. The draw is not the most challenging he's seen. This is a chance for him. And we'll see what happens. We'll see where he's at physically as well as mentally. But this is an opportunity for sure for Stefanos.
I agree. I think he's had a great grass season. And last year, the hangover from the French Open, coupled with not playing any grass, really did him in. I mean, he's got one of the best forehands, if not the best forehand on tour. Rayo Pelka would tell you he has the best forehand on tour. And yeah, you're right. I mean, he definitely should be better on grass. He has a great opportunity in front of him. But I will say, whether it's Tsitsipas or Kyrgios coming through and playing RBA, and whoever it is, RBA, Tsitsipas, Kyrgios wins that fourth round match, these guys are just all going to get absolutely destroyed by Jenson Brooksby in the quarterfinal.
Jenson, okay. Still confident on Jenson. I mean, I don't
plus 2,000 to win the quarter as of this recording. It's not terrible.
Not worried about the. I know it's grass and it's different, but the momentum hasn't really been there for him heading into this tournament. And you're a baseball guy. I know this. I thought the theory of, well, maybe Jenson with this unique, different style is like a pitcher that comes onto the scene with an unorthodox style, or maybe he goes AL to NL. And they don't know they've never seen him before. The hitters haven't seen him before. I've started to see the second time around that maybe Brooksby's not taking these players by surprise like before.
I think there's a level to that. And I think, though, I mean, we saw it with, he bageled Goffin just about a month ago.
Yeah.
I think it was in Miami, or maybe it was afterward. But like I think there's something to be said for when the first time he plays a player, he always bamboozles them. And I think that while there are obvious concerns with the next time, players playing him multiple times, then figuring out, he is a very good game planner. And I think personally, like, he still has a great game for grass. I think he's still probably a lot of the shortcomings the last few months have been his own. Like, I think that he just hasn't played the clean brand of tennis that he's been known to play. Like, he's made a lot of mistakes himself, and he's just, that was his whole reason he came up, is didn't really make a lot of mistakes. He'll bait you in the long rallies and then just, you know, throw something crazy at you. But I mean, I don't know. I think I have faith. The guy's what? He's still 35 in the world. Yeah. After Wimbledon, he's going to be even higher, I think, because he doesn't have any points to defend here. So yeah, it's I mean, look, maybe he's not going to be the number one player in the world in the next year. Maybe he's not going to be top 5, but I certainly think that the future is still very bright. I mean, we've seen it, you know, I mean, he just is a crazy competitor, and there's no way he's just going to let failure become him. We know that. So we'll see. I mean, maybe he improves the serve over the next 2 years. Who knows what'll happen? But yeah, you know, I'm not losing faith like you are. I think that maybe let's slow the roll and let him develop as a tennis player. Like, that's sort of where I am at. Like, I think I maybe was too excited too early. But I don't think he's
It's a grind. I mean, to be a pro tennis player and have success at this level, you see it a lot where the rankings, you into the top 50 and then you take a step back to take 2 steps forward. So I think, and you see it on the women's side too, with someone like Emma Raducanu, who wins that major and then drops down and is having to, you know, adjust to life as a pro. A couple more things on the men before we switch to the women. Carlos Alcaraz, just want to mention him briefly, wins his first 2 matches. Grass is a new surface for him as a pro, obviously, but he's passing these tests with flying colors. He's fighting. Strofe was a brutal first round draw. He figures him out. And I think how his game translates and how he makes those slight adjustments to this surface is going to be fun to watch. But nobody is doubting that a player of this capability can adjust. It's just a matter of how that process will be.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I also I'm sorry, like I see him play and like he just doesn't look comfortable on grass. Like, I'm not saying his serve is obviously out of nowhere in the last like 5 months developed into this incredible weapon, right, whereas he was struggling to hold serve during the Golden Swing. That was a huge problem for him. You know, his serve is, you know, he's got so much pop. And so, yeah, with that, he's going to be good on grass. He just doesn't seem to have his legs underneath him, I don't think, right now. I think this Oscar Otte match is going to be really tough for him, just as tough as the Struff match was. And with all the, you know, with all this being said, like, you know, it's hard for me to see him winning this tournament or winning a Wimbledon, you know, even in the next couple of years. Like, he has to play more on the surface.
Yeah.
He's going to win multiple, right? Like, I mean, I know that John McEnroe on ESPN was like, oh, this guy's going to win, like, you know, 3 or 4 slams. Like, I mean, this guy might win, like, you know, he thinks he's going to win more than 10. This guy that's how good this guy is. And I think everyone would agree. Like, he is unbelievable at such a young age.
I'm not bashing Alcaraz at all. I think he can win.
Me neither. I'm just saying, right? Like, he is going to take some time before he
exactly. I agree that he's not ready yet to win Wimbledon. That would be my take too. 10 is a lot of majors. And I know it's like, I know that's only half. It's not even half of what these other guys have, but a 10-time major champion, like Pete Sampras won 14 is like an afterthought. Like, we're probably not going to see 14 for a long time. So,
but let me ask you this. You look at I'm not even talking about the guys who are up right now. I'm not even talking about Medvedev, who's 26 or 27. Yeah. You know, Tsitsipas, like whatever. Like, we know that Alcaraz, with the exception of the Medvedev thing, because we haven't really, I think we saw them head to head one time, and it was when he was like a baby. You know, we know that he can beat Tsitsipas, right? We know that he can beat Berrettini. He did on clay. He probably should have at the Australian Open. Like, I'm not even talking about those guys. I'm talking about the next generation of players. I think he's much better than Holger Rune. I think he's better than Jensen Brooks, Bjork Sinner. You go through the list. You know, it's going to have to take someone just as special as he is, because like as good as this next crop of guys is, like,
Korda,
hold a candle to
Korda.
Alcaraz. We saw Alcaraz crush Korda twice. I mean, Korda won, right? But then he crushed him twice.
Yeah. I agree he's at the perch, but I think upsets historically, granted in the Big 3 era, they didn't happen as much, but guys will get beaten. And if Alcaraz finishes with 10 slams, let's say exactly 10, he's 19 now. That leaves a lot of slams for everybody else to kind of split up. And
no, you're right. You're right.
I think we're going to win.
10's a modest number. It is. He's already a top 2 or 3 favorite in every slam according to odds makers, and that's going on the last 2 slams.
10 puts him as the top 10 player ever, like, you know, clear as day, like 7th or 8th on the all-time list, probably even higher. So
I mean, he's got the talent, man. Like he's already that good. Like that's what's crazy. I mean, look, obviously there's so many unforeseens, like injuries or anything, right? Could derail his career. But like the way that he's going right now, I mean, that's what you sort of have to reasonably expect, I think.
Yeah. More with Kenny Ducey here on Tennis Channel Inside In. I got to get your thoughts on the women's game. Iga Swiatek, obviously no surprise, at the top of all sports books, crushes in her first round match and sets the record with 36 straight wins, most in the 21st century. Same kind of discussion we had basically word for word with Novak Djokovic. I start looking at the draw. Who can challenge her? Who can push her? Maybe even take a set. I think unders and Iga has been the biggest cash grab that there is. Just betting unders in her matches, you'd be just crushing it at most clips. But looking at the draw, I mean, I think if she loses before the quarterfinals, it'd be a huge stunner.
I think the Barbara Krejcikova could give her a little bit of a trouble there in the fourth round if Krejcikova is able to come through. I would assume Alia Tomljanovic. I mean, look, that's going to be a tricky one. I know that she's probably the favorite in that by quite some margin, but I mean, the other thing about it is like we haven't seen Swiatek play that much grass. We certainly haven't seen her play grass yet this year until Wimbledon, and she loses 3 games in her first match, but like Tiana Fett, like I don't know. I'm willing to, because the men's seems so assured at this point with Djokovic. I'm sort of willing to play devil's advocate on a lot of different, like on maybe Iga Swiatek losing. I would agree that she's Alizé Cornet, like probably not going to be a tough test for her, but I think Krejcikova could be tough. Krejcikova's probably going to be tougher than if she gets Jessica Pegula here, or Andreescu. But Andreescu could be tough too. Like I think on grass, especially, Swiatek's great defense doesn't really. I don't know if it's able to do enough against a player that has so much power. I also love all the sounds of New York City coming through my headphone, and then I hear them in my headphones because they're coming through your speakers. Yeah. I would agree. I would say one thing while we're talking about the women's side. I mean, we came into this tournament and Carolina Pliskova rather, not Christina, the lefty, was I think plus 3,800 to win, and I thought that was insane, and I still think it's insane.
Last year's finalist.
We were just talking about this on grass, right, Mitch? It doesn't really matter if you don't have that form. Ugo Humbert won 7 matches all year, comes out, beats the number 3 seed on the men's side, which that whole nother story about Casper not being able to play on grass, whatever. But still, I mean, she steps on a grass court, it's really like she never left. Easy first round win. I think that she'll beat Katie Bolter, and then all of a sudden the draw really opens up. I favor her over Sorobas Tormo and Coco Gauff Pliskova. If we get that match, that's going to be great. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, there's the level of disrespect for last year's finalist, someone who took a set off of Ash Barty, which is hard to do. That's someone who could sneak up on the field and even sneak up on Swiatek,
I think there's a lot to that. I think, again, it's like the Berrettini thing when he was not, before he got COVID. Like if he's healthy, if he's playing his game, it suits the surface, you can have success. The thing is, with all the value you can get, even at 38-1 is crazy. With women's tennis, I've noticed, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I feel like you can still get great value when you get to the 4th round and quarterfinals to pick the tournament winner, because of how much of a favorite Iga is. That also it's just hard to figure out who that next up is. So maybe that's a better way to look at it. I agree with you on Pliskova and Coco being a huge match, huge ramifications. Coco didn't look great in her first match. She did survive, and she showed that competitive spirit, but she's going to have to clean stuff up, because playing a server like Pliskova, if we do get that match, is a mega jump up. She's not going to have the ability to break back as much if you don't protect your serve, as you know. So that's something where I would kind of wait to see who wins that match and then maybe push my chips in.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously the risk, but I will also say if Gauff wins that match, she's going to the semifinals. God forbid Halep loses. I mean, Gauff's odds, she's already such a public bet, and she was plus 1,200 coming into the tournament.
Something around that.
I mean, her odds are going to be very short. She'll probably be plus 500 maybe if she wins that match.
If Iga's still in it, that's where you're at. It's you try to find value here. Iga's earned the right. I know it's grass, so maybe we're thinking, okay, this is a different surface. Let's see what obstacles are there. We also need players to step up. That's the other side of this. No disrespect to Iga, but there hasn't been anybody emerging. Maybe it's somebody that we said, maybe it's, Ons Jabeur doing well. She's got, she's rising up the ranks, 2 or 3 now in the world. So could be her. We'll see.
It could be Coco. I mean, the thing about Iga, which is crazy, is like last year she was losing so many matches. And that's what's so funny. She goes up against even like Sakari or Jabeur. Like you look at the head-to-head, like, oh wow, like the other player owns the head-to-head, or they beat her last year or twice.
Sakari
like,
match was
it doesn't matter.
It flipped everything. All of a sudden
she flipped that switch, and
they played in Doha, I think in Doha, and she beat her for the first time in her career, Sakari, and that was kind of the beginning of this mega streak. And it was like, okay, yep. I could beat her, I could keep it going. It's going to be fascinating to see. I would love to see, as I think you're in the same camp, some rivalries. I want to see some drama in here. But if Iga rolls through Wimbledon, then it's like, where do we go now? So.
I mean, we got to wait for the WTA version of Carlos Alcaraz to come along if it's not already Iga Swiatek, because I mean that's why I'd say Coco Gauff, like she is still a teenager, right? She's still super young. Like she could definitely hit that switch like Swiatek did. She's already sort of done it this year. Yeah.
She's got levels to go up. Like love a lot of her game, most of it. Absolutely adore her competitive drive and her spirit out there. The serve has gotten better. It's not, it's still got some vulnerabilities. The forehand breaks down. And that's the part of her game where she can overcome it against certain players, almost all of them. But the French Open final, and Iga's smart, and these top players are smart. They know, okay, I'm just going to, here you go. Here's balls to your forehand. Prove me wrong. So, but I say that, yes, she's still a teenager. There is levels to go up. So that said, though, I did want to get your thoughts, Kenny, on the Serena first round match against Harmony Tan. Wasn't the highest level of tennis, I think we can agree on. But Serena's fighting out there. Pretty remarkable at her age to go 3 hours versus a younger, fitter, by all accounts, player, and really push her to the max. But I looked at this as saying a couple different things. One being the old Roger Federer quote when he lost to Djokovic in 2008 Australian Open, where he created a monster, essentially. We just expect greatness from these players for all times, and it doesn't necessarily work like that. The other is, I think she showed flashes of the old Serena, but she has to commit to playing a schedule, not a full schedule, a semblance of a schedule, to have a chance to really unlock something else. Will she do it? I don't know. But that was my takeaway. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on Serena, the match, and where she goes from here.
Well, that was where it was last year, because she did play sort of a schedule, or she played some matches. She got some match fitness. And, she still wasn't able to really come through with a Grand Slam win. I mean, the last couple of years, I think. So yeah, it wasn't, as you mentioned, it wasn't a high level. Caroline Wozniacki, and who knows, obviously women's tennis better than I do, said that she thought Serena was moving very well. I disagree. She hit some great return winners, and that's why she's such a threat on grass, because she has that power, right? So it doesn't really matter how she moves. Like she can hit you off the court, because that's what she's always done. With that said, there were some flashes, but ultimately it just, if you're going to talk about winning a Grand Slam, especially we just had this whole discussion about how dominant Swiatek is, and even Simona Halep, and there's plenty of other potentials, people to stand in their way, like in Andreescu, a Sakari, right, who's come along and played excellent tennis, or a Coco Gauff. Like Serena Williams, there's a clear difference between, she's going to contend for the title, and she's going to win a couple matches, and like the former, or the latter, was even very generous, as we saw. The former was just crazy. I mean, I think she was 20-1 to win Wimbledon this year, which is stupid. Like, she hasn't played in a year. And for all the things we say about grass that you don't really need form, that's crazy. And so, I thought that it was kind of, sad, because like we do expect these players who are the greatest players ever to be great. But like, also, there was just it was sad, because the things that she had to celebrate just weren't things that we would normally see her celebrate, right? Like just handling an easy volley at the net, tears of joy. That's what it meant to her, right? Like she has hit that shot, she handles volleys, whatever. She puts away easy winners with so much court all the time, and doesn't, really, I mean, she's always been great at letting her emotions go and showing you how she feels, but like, she was celebrating big match wins, big, deciding tiebreaks in quarterfinals of Grand Slams, not trying to serve out a match against Harmony Tan. So that was what was sad about it for me. And I think that's also proof that she has a long way to go if she really does want to compete at a Grand Slam. But it was entertaining. And I think that's really all that we could have asked was like, we saw Juan Martín del Potro leave the court this year in tears. We saw Roger Federer, get injured again and have to go away for a year. Like, there have been a ton of sad comebacks. That could have been a lot worse. And I think she proved a lot to herself. She proved a lot to all of us that she can still play tennis, right? I mean, Harmony Tan is world number 151, but she's also not like world number 400, right? I mean, she definitely showed something to us out there. And also Harmony Tan, speaking of the Del Potro match, just transformed into Federico Del Bonis in that match. She was hitting so many drop shots, just so crazy. But there's a difference between Wimbledon first round and like the freaking Argentina Open. Like, give me a break, Fetty. Come on, dude. I'm still not over that. That was so Bush League. Final game of Juan Martín del Potro's career. This guy's hitting drop shots. He's already up a break. Just let the guy serve out the mat. Come on, dude. Let him hold. That was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I mean, you would agree, right?
Yeah, it was a little much, and given the stakes, I do. Tennis.
It's an ATP 250, a fellow countryman, a legend, your friend. He's supposed to be his friend, and he's drop shotting him. He's already up a break. Give me a freaking.
We gotta get a status check on that friendship. Now, getting back to tennis and Serena, it's just such a physical sport, even on grass. They went 3 hours, and to think that Serena would have had to win the tournament, do that 6 more times is just, it's hard. And she's done so much great things in her career that when she doesn't, we're like, what's wrong? What's going to happen? And the standard she set is just sometimes it's for all of them too tough to keep living up to. We'll see where she goes from here. Any opportunity to see her play is a good opportunity. It's a blessing at this point, but we'll have to monitor that. Kenny, this was fun talking to you on Tennis Channel Inside In. Where do you stand? The last thing, where do you stand on, Fokina getting the point penalty against Vesely to lose a match with everybody's favorite umpire, Carlos Ramos, in the chair?
I mean, come on, delaying the inevitable. Vesely was going to hit an ace and win the match anyway, but that was pretty funny. It was quite, you always know when the player just sort of is like giving a half-hearted argument. Like, he was just like, oh no, but there was the coaching one. There was the time one. Like,
well, how do they not know the rules? Like, there's so many.
I don't get it. We talked about this before. Yeah. There's especially a guy like Fokina, who always breaks rackets, throws, the guy gets a lot of code violations. He has a lot of fines against his name. He should know what the deal is.
And I spoke lightheartedly. I spoke lightheartedly there about Ramos, but the thing is, like every athlete, basketball, a referee with a quick whistle, like adjust accordingly. This is kind of how it is. Now, unfortunate ending, but 5-set, had some good match tie breaks in there. It's been good. Kenny, this is great. We'll follow you on Twitter, follow all your stuff. And then, I guess we'll just see you tweeting about tennis and Aaron Judge.
Thank you. Yeah, it's nice. I used to tweet about tennis years ago, and it would fall on deaf ears because I had a bunch of baseball, basketball followers. But I'm starting to find my friends on here, so it's great. It's great to be here. I hope to do it again. Hope to see you in person again. Let me know if you're coming out to the U.S. Open. That'd be great. And it was an honor to be here. I'm looking forward to my next appearance already. Appreciate it. You can catch him as a betting analyst for NBC Sports Edge, Action Network, and for Boardroom. Kenny Ducey, thanks for joining Tennis Channel Inside In.